I think this goes for a lot of traumas in history like this. It really takes that second, generation removed to be able to go, wait a second, that's not right. Like, why does it have to be that way? We are the ones to now really challenge the status quo.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I like to spread that out a little longer so you guys make sure you know the name of the podcast. My name is Yonah Weiss. As always, your host. Today, I have a wonderful guest. Excited to talk with Whitney Elkins-Hutten from PassiveInvesting.com, one of our favorite syndicators out there. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. This is going to be fun.
Well, I'm sure it is, especially with that attitude. It's going to be fun. Yeah.
How can we go wrong?
Exactly, right? Well, give us a little background, Whitney, if you would, for our listeners, to some context of who is Whitney.
Oh, well, definitely. Well, as you mentioned, I'm the director of investor education here at PassiveInvesting.com. One might think that I have like a big, Rolodex of initials after my name and degrees in finance and real estate. I don't. I actually started off as an accidental landlord back in 2002 and bought a property with a significant other. Fast forward about a month later, relationship fell apart, and here I had a house. And I know a lot of people have probably heard this story already, but that was probably not only my foray into real estate, but just really gave me a good taste on what it means to provide value, and as opposed to trading time for money. But fast forward, did a few more fix and flips on my own. That's how I exited from that first property, and I actually regret today that I sold it. But eventually started holding on to my properties that I was rehabbing and put tenants in them, created passive income. And then I had a baby girl, and I was taking care of two family members, and my mom was aging and needed a way to scale, not only with the number of units we were acquiring, but also scale my time. And so, collectively at the same time, I entered into multifamily real estate as an active partner, as well as started investing passively in other people's deals. Really, that whole cash flow quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki finally landed with me. It only took 15 years.
Right. Yeah. It takes time.
Hey, at least you learn the lesson, right? That it's a failure if you never learn. But long story short, I've scaled personally a portfolio of over $700 million in partnership in real estate, 6,300 plus multifamily residential units, self-storage, hotels, car washes, as well as other passive investments. But in that, what I'm super passionate about is educating people how passive investments, not just entering real estate and learning how to earn quote unquote, passive income, but really creating passive income and also scaling your time so you can achieve those 5 freedoms in life. That's where my passion lies, and why I'm happy to be on the podcast today.
That's awesome. And so as director of investor education, right, that's a pretty cool title. And it really does speak to, I think, and we've had Dan Hamford actually as one of the first guests on the Weiss Advice podcast. So if anyone wants to go back to the first 10 episodes, he may have been actually the first guest. I don't even remember if he was the first guest, but definitely in the first 10, founding this company together with the partners and then growing and scaling it to where it is today. I mean, I remember in June, we were back at the conference and, it was just almost incredible to see the growth of not only how many assets, how many, zeros are after that, but also the team members. I mean, it's grown to a team of over 60 people, I believe. And that's just a testament to what an incredible company that they've grown.
Yeah, we have 1.3 billion assets under management, 3,300 multifamily units, 6,600 self-storage, 16 car washes as of today. Congrats. And
That's
we just
awesome.
closed on 2 more, 153 hotel keys. And, honestly, one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we have a 70% repeat investor rate, and we have over 2,000 investors that have done repeat investments with us.
That's crazy.
To me, that's just a testament to, not only the quality of the deals, but like, as you said, the quality of the team, because really it's the operator. It's what we do in service of, for our investors that keep, people happy and coming back. We have over 40 dedicated employees. And then if you count our car wash property management side, like we're up over almost 200. So,
Wow, that's crazy. And so as director of education, which is really the question that was formulating in my head before like I went down, I was just like,
what does that mean?
what exactly do you do? But I think what I was trying to formulate in my head is that's just amazing that you've grown such a company that you have the need and foresight to have someone who is in charge of this extremely relevant and important part of the business.
No, definitely. So, really my background, once I made that transition into general partnership multifamily, I was the director of investor relations and operations with a different private equity group. And, you had an amazing growth experience there. When I decided to step down from that particular role, I was super passionate about continuing to talk to people about real estate, and eventually came over here to passiveinvesting.com. But there was a need, I think when people view direct investor relations, there's an education component. There is the services component. And then there's just like, how do you walk that investor through the experience?
Right.
And it takes a village to do this. There isn't just one or two people that can actually, take the investor end to end through the entire journey from becoming familiar with the company, all the different assets that they have to offer, different verticals they have to offer. And in our case, we do multifamily self-storage, hotel, car washes, and real estate debt. And that's a hard thing to cover in 20 minutes with most investors.
Right.
But, so there's really, I think as groups grow, there is a need. I mean, there's a few other people like me out there. And so, but I think that really gives testament to, how that company, who they work with, how they've grown.
Sure. I mean, and the fact that you guys are tracking the data and understanding not only who your investors are, but how often they are reinvesting and coming back. And you said a 70% reinvestment rate. I mean, that's just incredible. But also because you have so many offerings at any given time that it's just, there's a lot in there. What do you think are some of the reasons, as not only a passive and active investor yourself, but for people out there who are busy professionals, what's one of the reasons or biggest reasons they'll want to invest passively in general?
Yeah, I think once, somebody really understands that real estate is a good fit for their portfolio and what the power of, investing with groups. Why do people invest in syndications or invest passively? They're wanting access to, a market or a strategy that they themselves either can't do or won't do, right? Maybe they're a high net worth individual and they just don't have the time, or maybe they do Airbnbs or something like that, or a single family investor. And they're just like, I can't learn about multifamily and self-storage. I don't want to. I don't have a passion for building that part of my real estate knowledge. So I'm going to go find the operator who has the knowledge and expertise. I think investing in teams is very important as well, because it takes a lot to scale your own business. I mean, I was buying, my own, apartment buildings at one point in time, but I had dreams of taking down that, 350 unit apartment complex. It takes a village to do that. And when you invest passively, you as an investor automatically get to tap into that strength. Right. You get to tap into the strength of the operators, ability to secure credit and lending. You get to tap into their strength of their Rolodex of realtors and brokers and all those relationships they spent so much time and energy to develop. And more importantly, you get to tap into their time, right? For me, I passively invest in car washes. Right. Okay. Like I'm not going to go out and like throw down $1.5 million to, have my own, car wash. And, I don't have the interest in operating that. However, I do have, I'm willing to take my money and get exposure to that asset and take advantage of somebody else's time, knowledge, and expertise to grow that. And also it gives me diversification as well.
So many good reasons there. I mean, that itself, we could dig out each one of those. Yeah, no, I mean, we could. That's true. We could also go into really, every one of those that you mentioned, because there's a lot that's in there. But I actually want to take it in a little bit of a different direction, because in passing, when you were introducing yourself, you kind of said something about the 5 freedoms, right? I mean, you just kind of like said it in passing, like as if everyone knows exactly what you're talking about. Like I picked up on that. I was like, wait, I'm going to get back to that soon, because I want you to explain what you mean by that.
Yeah. So, and this concept isn't mine that I stumbled across this. So, I think a lot of people, when they get into real estate, especially when they start scaling, they're probably in pursuit of some sort of like financial freedom, FIRE movement, financial independence. But that for me is only one piece of the puzzle. Like, what does that give you, right? There's freedom, of choice, freedom of location independence, freedom of time, right? But even then, when I was in pursuit of this for myself, there was something that was missing, right? Like, I'm like, okay, that's great. I've got the money coming in. I got my time. I can choose what I do. And really, what I was after is freedom of impact. Like, how many lives can I touch? How many lives can I change? And that really only comes whenever you have all those other freedoms available to you, that you've got the money coming in, you've got the time, you can move around and do what you need to do, and you can make that conscious choice that this is what you want to do with your life. That's the impact. I think a lot of people call it purpose. I know if I go to my husband and say, hey, what's your purpose? He's going to be like, what? But like, how do you want to impact the world, right? Like, that's a very different question because he can answer that. It doesn't take this whole huge introspection to be able to answer that.
Right.
And I think really that's what passive real estate can give to people, to any investor, is, some sort of on that continuum of freedoms, which ones are you after? That kind of leads into your why. But I think there's another layer on top of that. And, I think I've talked a lot about goals lately with people. It's like, how do you want to feel when you achieve X? Like, if you're going to be going after financial independence and you want $15,000 a month coming in, like clockwork, great, but the closer you get to $15,000, I bet you that person moves the goalposts.
Right.
Unless they know how they want to feel when they hit that. And that's where those other freedoms come in, because it helps help people orient around to that emotion so they can experience fulfillment.
Yeah. And I think on that point, a lot of people who are busy professionals and are aiming for that passive income goals and that kind of the time freedom that will bring to that, they may not be used to what that may bring, right? Meaning they're setting themselves up for something that until they actually get there, they may not actually know what to do with the free time. And so part of like what you're saying is having that purpose and having that drive and knowing, what you're living for, what this is all about, not just how to get more money or how to have more time, but what to do with it.
Right. And then it's a journey, right? It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. You have to start somewhere. And for most people, it's like, okay, I need more money coming in, or I need to have be able to step back like 10 or 15 hours a week from my job, or just have that security of knowing that, if I should need to retire one day or tomorrow from my job, that I've got, something else behind that I can rely on.
Yeah. And I think the passive income, right? The passive investing is a big component of that, because if you're actively investing, for the most part, you're just creating for yourself another job. And not everyone has the time or the energy or the desire to take on another job. I know that's what's kept a lot of people from investing in real estate, because they think that it's really just, I don't want to deal with tenants and I don't want to deal with, all those things that they talk about. But passively investing, it is what it sounds like. There is such a thing. And that is by investing in a syndication, leveraging, like you said earlier, groups who have the experience, who have the, the shoulders, the credit to be able to do this. And not only that, have a track record that they've done this before and are continuing to do this. To be able to have 70%, I'm just shocked by that number, of like returning investors to new projects. That means that they're happy with what the returns have been. And with 2,000 investors, that's a huge amount. We're talking about 1,400 like actively reinvesting investors in deals. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to kind of expound on one of those things that you brought up. I think for a lot of people that they think that there's a journey they have to go through, right? I have to work my W-2 job or, be self-employed. And then my first step, I have to buy a single family rental or a small multifamily before I can even entertain investing in somebody else's deal. That's how I'm going to earn my street cred. That's actually not the case. Like, if you have a higher and best use of your time and knowledge in your job, JOB, or in your business, there's no gold stars. There's no rewards. There's no certificate that you said, nobody's telling you, hey, you've passed this level, right? I'm going to date myself like, Mario Brothers or anything like that. Like, you don't get a gold star to jump to the next level. Like, you can make that leap, but that comes from, learning how to invest in somebody else's operating business. So it's really a relationship that you're forming with an operator. So you're looking for those operators that have the knowledge about the markets and the deals and, have the networks in place. I think investors get, the one huge mistake that a lot of investors make when they first start investing passively is they get starry-eyed by numbers and returns. And right now, we're recording this in October. Inflation's on everybody's minds. Is there a recession? Are we in the recession? Are we at the end of the recession? That's on everybody's minds. What's happening with interest rates? And they're so fixated on returns, they're forgetting to orient to what the actual situation is. Even now, more than ever, you have to invest with a team that you know, love, and trust to help you navigate that.
And I love how you kind of slipped in there, no love and trust there, because Dan always talks about no like and trust, but it's more of the same because you're going to keep doing with the love. But you're absolutely right there. We're confused. People are confused. And really, I mean, there is concern. Like, when you're in an inflation situation, when you're in a recession situation, there is concern, right? But having a team that has a track record, that has the wherewithal, you can still be successful in investing. Figuring it out on your own, maybe not so much. But that's something that we all have to deal with. So as being an educator is really what you've kind of grown into in your role here. Did you ever see yourself as in the previous jobs or anything like that before you got into the real estate and the investor relations thing as an educator in a way?
Oddly enough, so my background is in public health. I come from the medical field. And so I was working mostly in infectious disease and in sexually transmitted diseases, actually. And there's a lot of education that goes into that. And then eventually I transitioned into bioterrorism after 2001. And I was educating the medical community on smallpox and anthrax and other biological and chemical agents. But they don't call it education, they call it facilitation and training. And so I feel like I've been groomed for this the whole entire time, and I think this is a hard thing for investors too. When they're making that, do I get into real estate? How far do I scale? There's an identity piece. I didn't really embrace that identity piece for myself because I always thought I'm a public health professional, right? But really, people being uneducated in finance, in personal finance, and how to build wealth for themselves, I really now fully believe in my heart is a public health issue. How different would the world be if there was just basic financial education and knowledge accessible for all? But even like those of you, maybe you're listening to this, you're a little bit more, stable in your income and earnings, have a little bit more privilege. What impact you can create in the world if you were able to free up your time, knowledge, and expertise to serve others.
And I think that's a paradigm that not a lot of people even relate to because number one, weren't given the financial education to begin with. But I mean, in the end of the day, it's kind of going back to what I was talking about before, like you may have that freedom or that financial freedom or that extra, zero in your bank account or whatever that is. But what are you doing with it, right? What are you doing with that time? And I think what you touched on there is being able to make an impact and being able to do something greater in the world to help other people. I think that's, to me, my opinion is that's the purpose of creation. Like that's why we're here. We're here to help each other, not just like everyone for themselves. And so when we're contributing to the society, to the environment, the more financial freedom you have, the less you have to rely on others to do for you, right? Including government, including, all these organizations. So you can add value, you can give back. And so taking that role as a leader or someone who is making an impact, you'll get there faster if you have more financial education. So yes, I totally agree with that. And so when investors are learning about this, surely they're sharing it with their friends and their family. I'm positive that you get leads or you get referrals all the time because like, hey, I just made X amount of money on this investment. You should do this too. A lot of people think, it's hard to believe or it's too good to be true. That famous thing. I remember my father, he should be well, he always would come to me like, no, it's too good to be true. You can't invest in that. And then, I keep telling him about different investments. He's like, no, it sounds too good to be true. Until you show him the actual, the K1s, he's like, okay, well, maybe now I get it.
Oh, I mean, it's through no fault of our own. And this was really kind of a stark learning that I had, at least in our generation, hopefully, we can be the generation of transitory change. moving forward. But I'm still a product of, the Great Depression. My grandparents went through that trauma. They educated my mom and, my dad in a certain paradigm. And they in turn, educated me in a certain way. And, for me, it's that being, two generations removed. And I think this goes for a lot of like, traumas in history like this. It really takes that second, generation removed to be able to go, wait a second, that's not right. Like, why does it have to be that way? We are the ones to now really challenge the status quo.
Sure.
And so I'm really excited about that. But it does take a certain level of self-reflection to kind of get to that point and to be open. But yeah, I had the exact same experience. I mean, I went home and, was so excited to tell my mom that I bought this, piece of property, and, I'd made more of my day, than I did in my day job, and I wasn't paying any of my, mortgage. The tenants were paying everything. And she was like, "You're nuts."
Right.
And that was just on one property. Now you get multiple units like that under your belt,
Crazy. It's so
I'm not
cliche
so crazy
almost.
anymore.
Right. Well, it's almost cliche because the society is kind of has trained us to think that something like that is like crazy and is like wild and you can't do anything like that. Whereas like to spend X amount of money on like a car or, with credit card debt, that's totally fine. Like that's totally sound advice, right? To do that. And which is, that's the real crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was told, grow up, go to school, get a good job, get married, buy a house, have kids. I didn't necessarily do all that in that order, but, really, it's like you said, breaking through those paradigms, there's a different way to operate. And, the quicker that I can help people open their eyes, and I'm not the only one doing this type of work, to what is possible, with passive investing, with passive real estate. I mean, like I said, there's just so much positive impact that we can create in the world.
100%. Yeah. And it's great to see it happening. It really is.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Whitney, I want to transition now. We call the final four. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests. First question for you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
Ooh, so I wanted to say it was my first job working in a flower shop. That's when I realized that I was allergic to roses.
Oh boy.
But really it was a double-edged sword. It was one of my favorite jobs, but also really bad. I had to when I was working in public health and getting my master's degree, I had to go work with mosquitoes, and we had to do landing biting ratios with mosquitoes. And so I was in New Orleans. We'd trudge out into the swamps at about 3:00 in the morning, had to be out there before sunrise. And then we would, rock, paper, scissors to see who had to stand there.
Wow.
And let the mosquitoes land on them and bite them. So, and we're trying to find the mosquitoes that have like the different encephalitis, like Western equine encephalitis, Eastern equine, St. Louis encephalitis. And so, yeah, somebody had to be you're fully clothed, right? You're not going to get bitten on the skin, but that just sucks. Standing in swamp water and then somebody having to measure that landing biting ratio.
Wow. Yeah, that does sound like quite the job. I wouldn't want to wish on my worst enemy type job, but I guess someone's got to do it when you're talking about research, needs to be done. Okay. Well, second question will take you to, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Yeah, there's so many that I can name here. Cash flow quadrant being one of them. That's really the one where it like hit me in the head. Oh, that's how people make money. That's how people create a rich balance sheet. But I think the one that created the biggest paradigm shift for me was The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. I'm constantly rereading that book at least once, if not twice a year. And every time I reread it, I pick up on something else on how to, set goals and prioritize, but
right.
In balance of everything, not just business goals or personal goals, but like, how do you hold these goals holistically with who you want to be as a person, who you want to be with your family. And it's so amazingly simple. It's a simple system.
It is. No, and that's a great book. We've definitely had that mentioned before on the show, and we'll put that in the show notes for anyone who hasn't yet checked out The One Thing, because it's truly a classic. So appreciate you bringing that up. And we'll go to the third question, which is, what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
Honestly, I need to learn how to cook better. So where my family wants to eat the food, I have a background in nutrition. A lot of people are like, "Oh, great, you're a great cook." And I'm like, I'm a horrible cook. I just know what to eat. But yes, that is something I need to develop. Like when I can hone in on a recipe and make it really great, but just like being a general cook and like being a master in the kitchen, I am not.
Well, hopefully it's something that can be learned. I believe it is. So it's a great thing. It's fun. It's funny. I actually really enjoy cooking, but not that I'm very good at it, and not that I do it very often. But when I like do it, I'm like very focused. I know what I'm doing. I have these recipes and stuff that I'll just make. But yeah, it's certainly something that needs to be honed, especially if you're constantly expected to, be cooking for others and for yourself, and just making sure.
That's the thing is my husband does all the cooking and he wants kind of control of the menu because he knows if I got a control of it, it'd be a bunch of raw food. So he's like, honey, I'll cook tonight. But yeah, it's enabled me to not develop that skill.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, it's a good one to have. So good luck with that. And we'll move to the fourth and final question, which is, what does success mean to you?
Yeah, this is something that I've really, kind of evolved over the years. I could associate it with goals and attaining measure, but really where I've landed, in the past couple of years is like, how do I want to feel when I hit a goal? And because that will help me understand when I'm fulfilled. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue to move the goalposts and not know when enough's enough. And I think it's really, for me, success is understanding what does it take for me to feel fulfilled.
Wow. And have you gotten to that to a certain extent? Meaning, do you understand?
Well, it applies to different areas of life, like to, your health, your relationships, and your wealth, your horizontal income, your vertical income, right?
Sure.
It can apply to all of those gardens or areas of life. And I think I will continue to nudge the goalpost further. I'm a very driven person, but at some point in time, I think I have to understand what the emotion is, right? For my health, like, is it a number on the scale or it's how I feel in my body?
Right.
Because if it's going to be a number on the scale and as I age, our bodies change, right? I'm going to be constantly disappointed. But if it's how I feel from like a sleep and an energy standpoint, and that is attainable for me. Now
Sure.
I know what to do.
No, that's a great
just
perspective.
one example.
No, it is. And it's a great example because it really illustrates the point. So I'm glad you share that. That's an excellent definition of success, by the way. Everyone has some different nuance to it. And this is kind of something that really haven't heard in that way before. So thank you for sharing that. And finally, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, social media, on passiveinvesting.com's website. However, if you go to passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com, it's a subpage on the Passive Investing website. There I have a free ebook, the Passive Investor Playbook, as well as a checklist. And, people can get access to my calendar directly if they would like to schedule time with me to talk about real estate.
Awesome. Well, awesome. We will make sure to put that in the show notes. And guys, check out the show notes. I don't know if you know this, but every week we have the awesome team at Streamline Podcast that edits this and creates those amazing show notes. So check out the show notes because they are packed with summaries as well as resources that we talk about in the show. And yeah, until next time, it's been great. Thank you so much for joining us today, and glad we can finally make this happen. I know we had rescheduled a couple of times, but I'm glad we're finally here.
Yes, this has been fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us all the way to the end. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.